I never thought I would become the villain of my own story. When I was younger, I imagined myself as the hero, the underdog who clawed his way up from nothing, the self-made man who proved everyone wrong. But sitting here now, in this empty apartment that costs more per month than my mother made in a year, I realize the truth that took me 3 decades to understand. I am not the hero. I never was. I cheated them all to win. Every single person who ever trusted me, believed in me, loved me. I manipulated them, used them, and discarded them when they no longer served my purpose. And now, at 36 years old, I have everything I ever wanted and nothing I ever needed. This is my confession. Not because I expect forgiveness, not because I deserve redemption, but because someone out there needs to hear what happens when you sacrifice your soul on the altar of success. My name is Daniel Mercer, and I am going to tell you about the day I became a monster. The day I looked at another human being and saw not a person, but a stepping stone. It did not happen all at once. Monsters are not born. They are made, slowly, choice by choice, lie by lie, until one morning you look in the mirror and you do not recognize the man staring back at you. I grew up in a small town called Millbrook, about 40 miles outside of Manchester. The kind of place where everyone knew your business, where your family name followed you like a shadow, and where your future was written before you were old enough to hold a pen. My father worked at the local factory for 27 years before they shut it down and moved operations overseas. My mother cleaned houses for the wealthy families on the hill, the ones with the big cars and the children who went to private schools. I remember being 12 years old, sitting in the back of my mother's car, watching her drive up that winding road to clean toilets and scrub floors for people who never even learned her first name. They called her the help, the cleaning woman. Never Margaret, never Mrs. Mercer, just the help. That was the first time I felt something dark stir inside me. Not anger exactly, something colder, something more calculated. I looked at those big houses with their manicured lawns and their children who never worried about whether there would be food on the table, and I made a promise to myself. I would never be the help. I would never be invisible. I would claw my way up to those houses on the hill, and I would make sure that everyone knew my name. What I did not understand then was that ambition without integrity is just greed wearing a better suit. School came easy to me, not because I was particularly brilliant, though I let everyone believe I was. The truth is, I learned early how to work the system, how to charm teachers, how to position myself near the smartest kids during exams, how to ask just the right questions in class to seem engaged when I had not done the reading. My first real act of deception came when I was 14 years old. There was a regional essay contest, and the winner would receive a scholarship to a summer academic program in London. Real money, real opportunity, the kind of thing that could change a trajectory. My best friend at the time was a boy named Thomas Ashford. Tommy, we called him. He was the kind of kid who actually was brilliant, the real thing. He wrote poetry and read philosophy and genuinely cared about ideas for their own sake. He was also naive, trusting, the kind of person who left his notebook open on his desk because it never occurred to him that someone might steal his work. I did not steal his essay. That would have been too obvious. What I did was worse. I sat with him for weeks, listening to him develop his ideas, asking questions that seemed like friendly curiosity. And then I took those ideas and wrote my own version. Better structured, more polished. I knew how to package things in a way Tommy never could. When the results came in, I won. Tommy came in third. He congratulated me with genuine happiness, told me I deserved it, said he was proud to be my friend. I remember lying in bed that night, waiting to feel guilty, waiting for the shame to wash over me, but it never came. Instead, I felt something else. Power. Control. The intoxicating realization that the world was not fair, had never been fair, and that the only choice was whether you would be the one taking or the one being taken from. I chose to take. That summer program in London changed everything. For the first time in my life, I was surrounded by wealthy kids, connected kids, kids who talked about their families' summer homes and their parents' business ventures like it was nothing. I watched them, studied them, learned to mirror their mannerisms, their confidence, their casual assumption that the world would bend to accommodate their desires. And I discovered something important. Most of them were not smarter than me. They were not more talented or more hardworking. They simply had access. They had connections. They had been given keys to doors that I did not even know existed. So I became a lockpick. By the time I started university, I had perfected my craft. I won a full scholarship to Cambridge through a combination of legitimate achievement and strategic manipulation. My personal essay was a masterpiece of selective truth-telling. I painted a picture of resilience and determination, leaving out the parts where I had stepped on others to climb higher. The admissions committee saw what I wanted them to see, a diamond in the rough, a working-class hero with exceptional potential. The first person I truly betrayed at Cambridge was a girl named Sarah Chen. She was studying economics, same as me, and she was remarkable. Brilliant mind, photographic memory, work ethic that put everyone else to shame. She was also my girlfriend for nearly 2 years. At least, that is what she believed. The truth is, I pursued her strategically. Her father was a venture capitalist with connections throughout the city of London. Her family hosted dinners where investment bankers and CEOs mingled over expensive wine. I needed access to that world. Sarah was my ticket. I did not set out to hurt her. That is what I told myself then, and it is the lie I repeated for years afterward. But looking back now, I see the calculated coldness of my actions. Every romantic gesture was designed to deepen her trust. Every whispered conversation was an opportunity to extract information about her father's network. When I finally secured an internship at a prestigious firm through one of her family's connections, I began pulling away. Gradually, carefully, blaming the distance on work stress and academic pressure. Sarah never saw it coming. The day I ended things, she looked at me with those searching brown eyes and asked what she had done wrong. Nothing, I told her. You did nothing wrong. It is just not working anymore. She cried. She asked if there was someone else. I lied smoothly, looking directly into her eyes as I did it. No, there is no one else. I just need to focus on my career. 3 weeks later, I was dating the daughter of one of the partners at the firm. Her name was Victoria, and she was even better connected than Sarah. I had traded up, upgraded. That was how I thought about relationships back then. Transactions, opportunities, never people, never hearts. The internship turned into a job offer. The job offer turned into a career, and the career turned into an obsession. By 25, I was one of the youngest senior analysts at the firm. By 28, I was managing my own team. By 30, I was a partner. I moved through the corporate world like a shark through water, always hunting, always hungry. What nobody knew was that my success was built on a foundation of sand. Every major deal I closed had a secret behind it. Every promotion I earned came at the cost of someone else's career. Let me tell you about Marcus Thompson. He was my colleague, my supposed friend, and the first person I professionally destroyed. Marcus and I started at the firm around the same time. He was talented, experienced, and had a work ethic that I genuinely admired. He was also competition. When a senior partner position opened up, we were both in the running. Marcus had more years at the company, more client relationships, more experience. By every objective measure, he deserved that promotion more than I did, so I made sure he did not get it. It started with small things: missed messages, scheduling conflicts, information that accidentally did not reach him in time. I created a pattern of minor failures that accumulated into a narrative of unreliability. Then came the big move. Marcus was working on the firm's most important client account, a deal worth hundreds of millions. I knew he was struggling with a particular aspect of the contract negotiations. Instead of helping him, I watched him flounder. And then, at the perfect moment, I went to the senior partners with a solution I had developed in secret while Marcus was drowning. The partners saw a savior. They saw initiative. They saw leadership. What they did not see was the invisible knife I had planted in Marcus's back. He was passed over for the promotion. I got it instead. At the celebration dinner that night, Marcus shook my hand and told me I deserved it. Just like Tommy had all those years ago. Just like Sarah had when she wished me well after I broke her heart. The people I hurt kept forgiving me, kept treating me like the good guy, kept failing to see the monster behind the mask. Marcus left the firm 6 months later. I heard through the grapevine that his marriage fell apart under the stress, that he struggled to find work in the industry for over a year, that his children had to change schools because they could no longer afford the private education. I did that. I destroyed a man's life for a promotion. And for years, I did not lose a single night of sleep over it. That is the thing about becoming a monster. It gets easier with practice. The higher I climbed, the more sophisticated my methods became. I learned that in the corporate world, information is the most valuable currency. So I became a collector. I made friends in every department. I remembered birthdays and asked about sick relatives and always brought coffee for the administrative assistants. Not because I cared about any of them, but because they talked, they gossiped, they shared things they should not have shared because I seemed so trustworthy, so kind, so interested in their lives. I built a network of unwitting informants, and I used everything I learned. When a rival was up for a major account, I mysteriously knew about their strategy before the pitch. When a colleague was negotiating for a raise, I happened to let slip to management that they had been interviewing at other firms. When partnerships were being discussed, I always seemed to be in the right place at the right time, with exactly the information needed to position myself favorably. None of it was illegal. That is what I told myself. The technical legality became my moral compass. If it was not against the law, then it was simply smart business. Competitive advantage, survival of the fittest. I had a dozen ways to justify my actions, and I rehearsed them so often that I actually believed them. By the time I turned 32, I had more money than I knew what to do with. A penthouse apartment overlooking the Thames. A car I rarely drove because I had a driver. Tailored suits that cost more than my father earned in 6 months. I had climbed all the way to those houses on the hill, and I had surpassed them. I was living in a tower now, looking down on everyone. But the view from the top was lonelier than I expected. Let me tell you about Rachel. Because Rachel is where everything changed, where the cracks began to show, where I started to understand what I had lost in my pursuit of what I thought I wanted. I met Rachel Harper at a charity gala, one of those events where wealthy people dress up and congratulate themselves on their generosity while barely denting their bank accounts. I was there for networking, nothing more. Another opportunity to collect contacts and information. Rachel was different from anyone I had ever met. She was a pediatric oncologist. She spent her days fighting for the lives of sick children, and she had come to the gala to advocate for increased funding for her hospital's cancer research program. When she spoke about her work, there was a passion in her voice that I had never heard before. Not calculated, not performative, genuine, raw, real. For the first time in my adult life, I was not thinking about what someone could do for me. I was simply captivated by who they were. We talked for 3 hours that night. She challenged me, questioned me, called me out when I deployed my usual charm deflections. "Where do you actually come from?" she asked. Not the polished story, the real one. No one had ever asked me that before. Everyone I knew was too busy being impressed by who I had become to wonder about who I had been. I found myself telling her things I had never told anyone. About Millbrook, about my mother cleaning houses, about the anger I had carried for as long as I could remember. Rachel listened without judgment, and then she said something that haunted me for years afterward. Anger is just grief wearing armor. What have you been grieving, Daniel? I did not have an answer, but the question burrowed into me like a splinter, working its way deeper with every passing day. We started dating, and for the first time in my life, I tried to be a real person. Not a character I was playing, not a strategy I was executing, just me, or at least the version of me that I thought might be redeemable. Rachel met my mother. She held her hand and asked about her life, her memories, her dreams. She did not see the cleaning woman. She saw Margaret. My mother looked at me after that visit with tears in her eyes and said that she had been waiting 36 years to see me with someone who actually knew me. I want to tell you that love changed me, that Rachel's goodness washed away all the darkness I had accumulated over the years. But life is not that simple, and monsters do not become heroes just because someone loves them. The truth is, even as I fell deeper in love with Rachel, I could not stop being who I had become. The lies were not just behavior, they were identity. I did not know how to exist without them. I hid things from her, not affairs, nothing like that. But I hid my work, the reality of how I operated, the people I had destroyed, the compromises I had made. When she asked about my day, I gave her sanitized versions. When she wondered about my rapid rise to success, I told her the story I had told everyone: hard work, determination, right place, right time. She believed me because she was incapable of imagining the kind of person I actually was. We got engaged after 18 months. I remember the night I proposed. We were at a restaurant overlooking the river, and she was wearing a blue dress that matched her eyes. When she said yes, when she slipped that ring onto her finger, I felt something I had not felt since I was a child. Hope. The genuine belief that maybe, finally, I could leave the past behind. That I could become the man she thought I already was. But the past does not stay buried. It has a way of clawing its way back to the surface. 3 months before our wedding, I received an email. It was from an address I did not recognize, and the subject line made my blood run cold. Remember Tommy Ashford? I almost deleted it without reading, almost convinced myself it was spam, but my hands were shaking as I clicked it open. The email was short, direct, devastating. Daniel Mercer, you stole his ideas, you stole his future, you have been stealing ever since. I know everything, the essay contest, Sarah Chen, Marcus Thompson, all of it. You have 30 days to come clean, or I will do it for you. There was no signature, no demand for money, just the threat of exposure. I sat at my desk for an hour, staring at that email, my mind racing through possibilities. Who could know about all of this? Tommy was the only one who might have pieced together the essay theft, but he had moved to Australia years ago. Sarah had no way of knowing about Marcus. Marcus had no connection to Tommy. The only common thread was me. Someone had been watching me, collecting evidence, building a case. For the first time in my adult life, I felt true fear. My instinct was to investigate, to identify the threat and neutralize it. That was how I operated. That was who I had become. But something else was happening too. Something I had not expected. The email had listed my sins in black and white, and reading them, seeing them laid out so plainly, I could not hide from what they represented. A pattern, a pathology, a systematic destruction of everyone who had ever trusted me. For 3 days, I barely slept. I canceled meetings. I avoided Rachel's calls. I sat in my office and I read that email over and over again, and I asked myself a question I had been avoiding for 20 years. What have I become? The answer was worse than I had imagined. I was not a success. I was a fraud. Everything I had built was stolen property, the career, the reputation, the life. All of it was purchased with currency I had taken from others, from Tommy's ideas, from Sarah's connections, from Marcus's opportunities, from dozens of others whose names I had forgotten, but whose futures I had altered for my own benefit. I was a thief, and the thing I had stolen most successfully was my own conscience. I should have come clean then. I should have gone to Rachel and told her everything, confessed my sins, and faced the consequences. But I was too afraid, too invested in the lie, too desperate to hold on to the future we had planned together. So instead, I did what I had always done. I started scheming. I hired a private investigator to trace the email. I increased security on my accounts. I started preparing contingency narratives, stories I could tell if specific accusations became public. I was treating my own redemption like a crisis management problem. But you cannot manage your way out of karma. You cannot strategize your way around truth. The universe has a way of bringing things into balance, and my balance was long overdue. The investigator came back with nothing. The email had been sent through multiple anonymizing services, completely untraceable. Whoever was behind this knew what they were doing. They had planned carefully, patiently, just like I would have. 2 weeks passed, then 3. I started to hope that maybe it was a bluff. Maybe whoever sent that email had decided not to follow through. Maybe I would get away with it again, like I always had. I should have known better. The exposure did not come in one dramatic moment. It came in waves. A slow-motion destruction that was somehow worse than any single catastrophe could have been. It started with an anonymous article on a legal industry blog, a detailed account of how Marcus Thompson had been sabotaged during his time at the firm. Specific enough to be credible, vague enough to avoid libel. The article did not name me directly, but anyone who knew the industry could connect the dots. Within days, people started talking. Colleagues who had witnessed bits and pieces over the years began comparing notes. Stories that had seemed unrelated suddenly formed a pattern. My name started appearing in whispered conversations. Then came the second article. This one was about the academic world, about essay contests that had been influenced by plagiarized ideas, about scholarships that had gone to the wrong recipients. It mentioned my undergraduate institution, my field of study, the year of the contest. Tommy Ashford had been contacted by then. After all these years, someone had found him in Australia and told him the truth about what happened in that classroom when we were 14. He gave a statement, said he had always wondered, said he had never quite trusted his memory of those conversations, said he felt sick knowing that his ideas had been the first rung on my ladder. I tried to reach out to Tommy, wrote him a long email explaining, apologizing, begging for understanding. He never responded. Rachel started asking questions. She had seen the articles, heard the whispers. Her colleagues at the hospital were talking. Her friends were sending concerned messages. She came to me one night with her eyes full of fear and asked me to tell her it was not true. And I lied to her. One more time. One final time. I told her it was a smear campaign. Professional jealousy. Competitors trying to tear me down. I used every manipulation technique I had ever learned to convince her that I was the victim in this story. She wanted to believe me. I could see it in her face, the desperate hope that the man she loved was not a fraud. She took my hands and told me she believed me, and I saw the doubt behind her eyes, and I knew that I was destroying the last good thing in my life. The final wave came 1 month later. An email was sent to every major client of my firm, to every partner, to every business publication that covered our industry. It contained documents, recordings, evidence that I had never imagined could exist. Someone had been keeping receipts. There were screenshots of messages I had sent, steering colleagues towards strategic failures, audio from conversations where I had shared confidential information with competitors, a timeline of my relationship with Sarah Chen that made the calculated nature of our romance undeniably clear. Internal memos from my early years that showed how I had maneuvered information to my advantage. It was a complete dossier of my deception. Years of work, compiled with patience and precision. The firm asked for my resignation the next morning. They gave me 2 hours to clear my desk. Security escorted me to my office and watched while I packed my belongings into cardboard boxes. People I had worked with for a decade avoided my eyes. Nobody said goodbye. Within a week, I was effectively blacklisted from the industry. My name became synonymous with betrayal. Articles were written analyzing my rise and fall. Think pieces explored the culture that enabled people like me. I became a cautionary tale, a villain in someone else's hero story. But the professional destruction was not the worst of it, not even close. Rachel left on a Tuesday afternoon. She did not yell. She did not cry. She simply looked at me with an expression I will never forget. It was not anger. It was grief. The death of everything she had believed about us. She told me that she had read the documents. All of them. She said she understood now why I had been so good at making her feel special. Why I always knew exactly what to say. Why I had seemed too perfect to be real. Because it was not real, she said. None of it was real. You were just doing to me what you did to everyone else. I was just another mark. I tried to tell her that she was different, that my love for her was genuine, that she was the one person I had never manipulated. But the words rang hollow even as I said them. How could she believe me? How could she believe anything I had ever told her? She left the ring on the kitchen counter, did not throw it, did not make a scene, just placed it down carefully, like she was putting a period at the end of our story. I watched her walk out the door, and I felt something break inside me, something that had been holding everything together, a load-bearing wall that I did not even know existed. And then I was alone, in my tower apartment, with my designer furniture and my expensive art and my view of the city lights, all the things I had sacrificed everything to acquire. They meant nothing. For 2 months, I barely left the apartment. I did not eat properly, did not sleep regularly. I spent hours staring at the ceiling, replaying every decision, every manipulation, every moment where I could have chosen differently, but did not. I thought about my mother, about how hard she had worked, about how she had never compromised her integrity, even when it would have made her life easier. She had taught me to be honest, to be kind, to treat people with dignity. Where had that boy gone? At what point had I lost him completely? I called her one night, at 3 a.m, unable to sleep. She picked up on the second ring, like she had been waiting. I told her everything. All of it. The things I had done. The person I had become. I confessed to my mother like she was a priest, and I was seeking absolution. She was quiet for a long time after I finished. Then she said something that shattered me. I knew, Danny. I always knew something was wrong. But you kept winning, and everyone kept praising you. And I wanted so badly for you to have the life I could never give you. So I convinced myself that the ends justified the means. I failed you too. We cried together over the phone, 2 people separated by miles but connected by grief. She told me that it was not too late, that redemption was always possible, that the only unforgivable sin was refusing to seek forgiveness. I did not believe her, but I held on to her words like a lifeline. The weeks that followed were the darkest of my life. I considered ending it, not dramatically, but quietly, fading away, disappearing from a world that I had spent so long trying to conquer. What stopped me was a letter. It arrived on a Wednesday morning, handwritten, with no return address. I opened it with shaking hands, expecting another attack, another document of my crimes, but it was something else entirely. The letter was from Tommy Ashford, the boy I had stolen from all those years ago. He wrote that he had been struggling with how to respond to everything that had come out. He had spent weeks being angry, feeling vindicated, wanting me to suffer as much as possible. But then he had a conversation with his daughter. She was 12 years old now, the same age we had been when we first became friends. She asked him what kind of person he wanted to be, not what kind of person he wanted me to be, what kind of person he wanted to be. And Tommy realized that holding on to hatred was its own kind of prison, that he could not control what I had done, but he could control what he chose to do with his pain. The letter said that he forgave me, not for my sake, for his own, because carrying anger for 20 years had taken something from him, and he was ready to put it down. He did not want to reconnect, did not want to be friends, but he wanted me to know that he had made peace with the past, and he hoped I could find a way to do the same. I read that letter 100 times. Each time, something shifted inside me, a loosening, a release. I had been expecting condemnation, and instead I received grace, not because I deserved it, but because Tommy was a better person than I had ever been. It was the kindness I did not deserve that finally broke through my walls. I started reaching out to people, not to make excuses, not to rehabilitate my image, just to acknowledge what I had done and offer whatever restitution I could. I contacted Sarah Chen. She had gotten married, had 2 children, built a successful career of her own. When she agreed to meet me for coffee, I expected hostility. What I found instead was a woman who had processed her pain long ago and moved on. She told me that after we broke up, she had been devastated. But eventually, she met someone who loved her genuinely, and she realized what authentic connection actually felt like. The contrast made her understand that what we had shared was not real, and that understanding was actually a gift. I apologized for everything, for using her, for lying to her, for treating her like a means to an end. She accepted my apology with more grace than I deserved. Then she told me something I will never forget. Hurt people, she said. I do not know what happened to you to make you this way, but the only way out is to heal. And healing requires honesty, not just with others, with yourself. Those words became my compass. I found Marcus Thompson next. That was harder. The damage I had done to him was more concrete, more devastating. His career had recovered eventually, but the years of struggle had left scars. His first marriage had ended. His relationship with his children had suffered. When I showed up at his door, he almost shut it in my face. I told him I did not come to ask for forgiveness. I came to confess, to acknowledge fully and completely what I had done to him, and to tell him that if there was any way I could make it right, I would do it. He let me in. We talked for 4 hours. He raged at me, called me every name I deserved, made me see the human cost of my ambition in excruciating detail. The nights his kids went to sleep wondering why Daddy was so sad, the jobs he did not get because rumors followed him, the marriage that crumbled under financial pressure. I sat there and took it all, because he was owed that. He was owed the chance to be heard. By the end of our conversation, something had shifted. Not forgiveness, not even close, but acknowledgement. He told me that no one had ever admitted responsibility before, that everyone always had an excuse, a rationalization, a way to make themselves the victim, by simply saying, I did this, I hurt you, I was wrong. I had given him something he had needed for years. We shook hands when I left. It was not a gesture of friendship. It was a closing of a chapter, a mutual agreement that the debt had been acknowledged, even if it could never be fully repaid. I spent the next year making my way through a list of people I had wronged. Some were willing to hear me out, others refused to meet. A few threatened legal action if I contacted them again. Each response taught me something about the complexity of forgiveness, about the fact that my healing could not come at the cost of anyone else's boundaries. The work was slow, painful, often humiliating. But with each conversation, I felt something changing inside me. The weight I had been carrying for decades was not disappearing, but it was redistributing, becoming something I could learn to bear. During this time, I reconnected with my mother, moved back to Millbrook temporarily to be closer to her, helped around her house, which had been falling into disrepair while I was off conquering the world. We talked more in those months than we had in the previous 20 years. She told me stories I had never heard, about my father's struggles with depression, about her own dreams of becoming a teacher, abandoned when she got pregnant at 19, about the sacrifices she had made without complaint because she loved her family more than she loved her own ambitions. I had spent my entire life running from Millbrook, from who I was, from where I came from. Now, sitting in my mother's cramped kitchen, I understood that I had been running from the wrong things. The shame was never about being working class. It was never about my mother's job or my father's factory. The shame was about believing that I was not enough, that I had to cheat and lie and manipulate to deserve a place at the table. Somewhere along the way, a frightened child had internalized a terrible lesson, that his authentic self was insufficient, that success required deception, that winning was more important than integrity, and that child had grown into a monster. Healing required dismantling those beliefs, one by one, examining them in the light, understanding their origins, and choosing, consciously and deliberately, to believe something different. It was the hardest work I have ever done. A year after my fall from grace, I received an unexpected call. It was from a woman named Priya Sharma. She was the one who had sent the anonymous emails, the one who had compiled the dossier, the one who had brought my empire crashing down. She wanted to meet. I agreed, though I did not know what to expect. We met at a quiet cafe in London, and she told me her story. Priya had worked in the research department at my firm. She was brilliant, hardworking, and completely unknown to me. I had never noticed her because she did not have connections, did not have access, was not useful to my ambitions, but she had noticed me. She had watched me operate for 3 years, had seen the patterns, had quietly documented everything because she believed that someday, somehow, the truth would matter. The final straw came when her mentor, a woman named Dr. Eleanor Grant, was pushed out of the company. Eleanor had been developing a proprietary analysis system. I had learned about it through my network of informants, adapted her ideas, and presented them as my own innovation. Eleanor was let go for redundancy. Her decades of work were erased. Priya had seen it happen, and she had decided that it was time to stop documenting and start acting. She told me this story without anger, without triumph. There was a weariness in her voice, as if the act of bringing me down had cost her something too. I asked her why she had not taken legal action, why she had exposed me anonymously rather than pressing charges. She said that she had considered it, but she realized that my destruction was not really her goal. Her goal was truth. She wanted the world to see what I was, and she wanted me to see it too. She asked me if I understood now, if I really saw the damage I had caused. I told her the truth. I told her that every day was a reckoning, that I woke up with the weight of my choices pressing down on me, that I was not seeking sympathy or redemption. I was just trying to learn how to live with what I had done. She nodded slowly. Then she said something that surprised me. That is a start. We did not become friends. That would have been too simple, too narrative. But we parted with a mutual understanding. She had done what she believed was right. I was trying to do the same now. Two people on opposite sides of a moral ledger, both carrying scars. The months that followed were quiet, reconstructive. I started volunteering at a legal aid clinic, helping people who could not afford representation. I used my knowledge of corporate tactics to advocate for workers who had been wronged by employers. I took on cases that powerful firms wanted to bury. It was not penance. You cannot balance karma like a checkbook. But it was a different way of using the skills I had developed, a way that built up instead of tearing down. I thought about Rachel often, wondered how she was, hoped she had found happiness with someone who deserved her. I wrote her a letter, not expecting a response, just telling her that she had been the catalyst for my transformation, that loving her was the first honest thing I had done in 20 years, that I would always be grateful for what she showed me, even if I had been too broken to receive it at the time. She wrote back. Months later, a short note. She said she had read my letter many times. She was not ready to talk, might never be ready, but she wanted me to know that she believed I was trying, and that was more than she had expected. It was not forgiveness, but it was something. Last year, my mother passed away, peacefully, in her sleep. In the house where she had lived for 40 years, I was holding her hand when she went. At her funeral, people from all over Millbrook came to pay their respects. They talked about her kindness, her generosity, the way she always had time for everyone, even when her own life was hard. They told stories I had never heard, about checks she had secretly written to neighbors in need, about meals she had cooked for grieving families, about the 1,000 small ways she had made her community better. My mother never had money, never had status, never had power, but she had something I had spent my entire life chasing without understanding it. She had integrity, and that was a wealth I had never earned. Standing at her grave, I made a new promise, not to the frightened child who had looked at the houses on the hill and decided to become a monster, but to the man I was trying to become. I would spend the rest of my life learning to be worthy of her example. I am 36 years old now. I have lost almost everything I once accumulated. My career is over. My reputation is destroyed. My fortune has been depleted by legal fees, settlements, and donations. I live in a modest flat, drive an old car, work at the legal aid clinic for a fraction of what I once made, and I am more at peace than I have ever been. Not because I have been forgiven. Many of the people I hurt will never forgive me, and they should not have to. Forgiveness is not something you can demand. It is a gift that others choose to give on their own timeline for their own reasons. But I have learned to live with myself, to face the mirror without flinching, to acknowledge the full weight of what I did without collapsing under it. I cheated them all to win, and I lost myself along the way. That is the simple truth of my story. But what I have learned is that losing yourself is not always permanent. You can find yourself again, piece by piece, choice by choice, in the slow, unglamorous work of trying to become a better person. The houses on the hill do not matter to me anymore. The corner offices, the prestigious titles, the accumulation of wealth and status. I understand now that those things were never really the goal. They were just a child's attempt to fill a void that could never be filled from the outside. What I was really searching for all along was the right to exist, the belief that I was enough, the validation that I had value. And those things cannot be stolen, cannot be manipulated, cannot be cheated into existence. They have to be built from the inside out, through the steady, patient practice of becoming someone worth being. To anyone out there who sees themselves in my story, to anyone who has compromised their integrity for success, who has manipulated others for advancement, who has traded their soul for a trophy they thought would make them happy, it is not too late. The cost of turning around will be high. The reckoning will be painful. You may lose things you thought defined you, but what you will gain is something far more valuable. You will gain yourself, the real you, the one buried underneath all the masks and strategies and lies, the one who has been waiting, patiently, for you to stop running and come home. I cheated them all to win, and I lost myself along the way. But this is my confession, and it is also my testimony. The way back is possible. I am living proof.